What are some very creepy facts? The Colombian serial killer Pedro Alonso Lopez, who is known as the Monster of the Andes, raped and murdered over 300 girls from Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. However, after he was caught and imprisoned for 18 years, he was put in a psychiatric hospital. There he was reviewed, declared to be sane, and was set free, in spite of his blatant avowal that he fully intends to kill again. Since he was released in 1998, nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. He is supposed to be 71 years old at present. He is known for being the most prolific killer ever. If you get a blood transfusion and get the wrong type of blood, ABOAB, one of the symptoms is a sense of impending doom. There is a genetic disease called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva. When tissue is damaged, it is replaced with bone, growths form underneath their skin, and their joints lock solid. So over time, those affected slowly become encased in a prison of bone just beneath their own skin. They usually have to choose between sitting or standing up for the rest of their life. By the end of their life, they have to drink every meal through a straw and can barely move. Over 90% of serial killers choose their victims through sexual desire. In fact, many serial killers have been caught because they return to the body of their victims to masturbate. Bacteria and viruses can be frozen for millions of years and still be viably infectious, and having never encountered humanity before, could have no end of catastrophic results should they be uncovered and manage to infect a person or animal. Not to worry, though, it's not like millions of ancient pathogens are currently trapped in permafrost, which is now melting bit by bit each and every day. Humans' eyes don't reflect light at night like animals do. I like to say this fact to my wife at a campfire. Your eyes have a separate immune system from the rest of your body. If they get damaged in such a way that it affects anything other than your eyes, your regular immune system can attack the damage and will not recognize them, meaning your own body can permanently blind you. What's worse, your body cannot tell the difference between either eye. If one of them gets infected or damaged, your immune system can attack your healthy eye and take away your sight entirely. Rosemary Kennedy was JFK's sister. She suffered from oxygen deprivation at birth, and that unfortunately stunted her mental growth. She had a pretty decent childhood, but as she grew older, she began to act out. Afraid that her behavior would risk his political career, her father, Joseph, agreed to have her lobotomized. Her mother, Rose, was against it and forbade him from doing it, so he did it behind her back when she went on a trip. After the operation, Rosemary's already low IQ was lowered even further, to the point she could no longer walk or communicate. Her family had her locked up in an institution and basically disowned her. They never visited and never publicly acknowledged her anymore. Rosemary died at the age of 86. Her mother never forgave her husband for what he had done. The men of the ship Essex, the true event that inspires the story Moby Dick, avoided islands after being shipwrecked for fear of cannibals. The islands were settled, and landing there would have brought salvation to the survivors. Ironically, because of this bypass, the men ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. There is a fungus, cordyceps, that can actually brain control insects, forcing them to move to a higher location where they will eventually die and release more cordyceps spores. The bottom of Lake Superior is cold enough that the bodies of dead sailors just remain. They don't really decompose because it's at freezing temperatures, so they instead get a coating of adiposcere, think that's how it's spelled, which is liquid body fat, hardened around them. Gordon Lightfoot wasn't lying when he wrote, "The lake never gives up her dead." Cannibals find the palm of the hand the tastiest. Elmer McCurdy was a failed Old West outlaw. His preserved body was put on display in a traveling carnival, and years later he was eventually assumed to be a mannequin until he was used on set for the TV show The $6 Million Man. His arm accidentally fell off during the shoot, revealing bone and muscle, and that he was a corpse, not a mannequin. After raping his blindfolded victims, the Golden State Killer would be super-duper quiet and pretend like he was gone, and right when the poor victims would start to move towards the phone or try to untie themselves, he would scare the fucking shit out of them. One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. Crocodiles can gallop like a horse. I don't like knowing this, so I am cursing you people with this knowledge as well. Fortunately, alligators cannot. Imagine being totally aware of someone performing CPR, but you physically can't move or respond. Well, that's what happens when you get bitten by a blue-ringed octopus. You have approximately 6 minutes between being bitten and someone starting CPR to keep your heart and lungs functioning to ensure you survive, all whilst being totally aware of what is happening to you. Neurotoxins are fun. Your brain can play tricks on you to make you see monsters in the mirror, called the Troxler effect. The Troxler effect is an optical illusion that affects how you perceive things, both visually and mentally. I once read that you should play dead if a bear attacks you, unless they start licking your wounds, because that means they plan to eat you. That still haunts me to this day. The astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger most likely didn't die until they hit the water miles below the initial explosion. If the sun exploded right now, you would be blissfully unaware of it for just over 8 minutes while the energy travels at the speed of light to get to you. There's a spider that gives you a 3-hour-long boner before you die from its bite. Edit: the boner it gives you is very painful. It wasn't until 1987 that the American Academy of Pediatrics declared it unethical to operate on newborns without anesthesia. Until surprisingly recently, the medical community felt it would be dangerous to give infants anesthesia and/or believed that they didn't feel pain. The human body can be drained of blood in 8.6 seconds given adequate vacuuming systems. Since 1900, over 13,000 people have been murdered by serial killers in the USA. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Peeling off Scotch tape in a vacuum creates X-rays. We don't know why. Since 2007, at least 20 detached human feet have been found on the coast of the Salish Sea. There's a parasite that enters a fish's mouth, eats the tongue, and replaces itself as the fish's new tongue. After getting stung by a cone snail, you don't feel the sting for a little bit. There is no antivenom and it can be lethal. Treatment is basically keeping the victim alive until the venom wears off. Blobfish in its natural habitat looks like a normal fish, but it lives so deep underwater that it doesn't use a normal gas bladder to keep itself balanced. Instead, it has a spongy skin that is slightly less dense than water, which becomes damaged and bloated when fishermen bring it up too quickly. It's not really the ugliest fish. It has just experienced something worse than one of us being thrown into outer space. Between sea level and space, there's 1 atmospheric pressure of difference. Between sea level and 2,000 feet underwater, their upper limit, there's 60 atmospheres of difference. If you begin to display symptoms of rabies, you will go crazy and die. There's no cure. Your brain will slowly melt until you're dead.